Imagine if that head trash was not there. Who would you be? What if I told you those fears were no longer a problem? What would you do? I'm Stephanie Costello, a mom of three, wife, and avid mountaineer. Beyond all of these, I am very much like you, an average person trying to navigate this thing we call life. My goal with this podcast is to bring to light the truth about what intimacy really is. You may smile, feel called out, or learn something new. Either way, you will learn you are in control. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Miss Hope, who is a wedding officiant, premarital counselor, and offers a wedding yoga practice. She's a scope of educator, a sprinkle of performer, a dash of administrator, and a whole lot of positive, nurturing energy. After growing up in New York, Hope moved down south to Atlanta, then hopped over to North California. After a classmate asked her to officiate her wedding, Hope stepped into her true calling. After the next 2 years, she created a premarital counseling program, founded A More Perfect Union, and moved back to her home base of New York. Hope is a registered New York City wedding officiant, an ordained interfaith minister, and a certified yoga instructor. She has been guiding couples around the world from the yes to the I do since 2009. All righty. Hello, and welcome, Miss Hope, to the Intimacy Truths podcast.
Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, listeners, we have a question for you. Do you struggle with experiencing change in your relationships? And so today we're going to talk about, Hope and I are going to talk about our serious passion for intimacy and bonding with other humans in a very healthy way. So Hope, tell us, how did you get to this realization of wanting to do this work?
It was really a calling that I personally didn't know that I had. I mean, currently my practice is as a wedding officiant, a premarital counselor, and a yoga practice for weddings. I am the niece of a rabbi, and he actually asked me to join seminary right out of high school. And I was like, what are you talking about? No way. Like, that's not cool. And I forgot about that for many years until my parents reminded me once I stepped into what is my calling now. But I didn't realize it at the time. So it took me a ways to get where I am. And I really feel that all of the experiences that I've had, up to this date really allow me to better do the work that I do.
I totally agree. Same here. When I was a kiddo, my journey started when I was 13. And it's now that I'm in the shoes that I'm in now, with the passion for intimacy and a passion for getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it just evolved from wanting to be a cop to working with people for many years to, okay, this is like the core of what people really are needing in life. And it's the ability to bond with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for me, that process began, in terms of being an officiant was, when a friend of mine asked me to officiate her wedding, but I quickly said no. I was like, why? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But it was, I realized, in terms of that idea of connection and friendship, I knew that I had to step up and be there for her.
Yes.
So it's been an exciting shift because that first wedding was a friend, and then that's the second wedding I performed, which wound up being 2 years later, was also a friend. And then I haven't officiated a wedding for a friend since then, 10 years ago.
Wow.
But it's allowing myself to be there for people who need me.
Yes. And what do you bring as a wedding officiant? Because I asked this question because sometimes there's some really spunky, like I feel like you're this spunky wedding officiant that kind of would be like having a comedian up there so that it's so much less awkward. I never had a wedding. So I always wonder, like, what's it like standing there staring at your partner and just staring at each other in the eyes while everyone's looking at you? Like, that seems so uncomfortable to me.
Yeah, it's really trying to bring yourself out of that. I had
Okay.
a conversation with a potential new wedding couple the other day that basically said, "Well, yeah, what do you do? You just, pronounce us married, so like, why should we care so much?"
Mm.
And it's like, "Oh, yeah, no, like, yes." The potential of awkwardly standing in front of your partner while everyone else stares at you
Yeah.
is like in actuality what happens, but gosh, like, it better not feel that way
Right.
or we're all in trouble.
Yeah.
So it's really being, a curator for a ceremony, being there in the moment to celebrate each of you, and then do what you really want me to do, which is legally officiate your union.
Yes, exactly. And so tell us about your conversations before that day, right? And when you're getting to the coaching, do you call it coaching?
I call it counseling, but
Counseling?
I think it's it could be seen either way.
Mm,
um I don't know why I chose that. It just felt more right to me. I
yeah.
just also felt that there was an understanding, a
Mm,
potential understanding of what it is,
right.
versus a coach. But I think over the last few years, coaching has certainly come up in prominence,
Mm.
that it may not be as a hard of a word to understand.
Yeah.
um
And so what's your process like when you're talking to them, especially about the intimacy? Is there a stronger sense of how to bond with each other so that when it gets to that moment, you're right, it shouldn't be awkward. And why is it awkward? For me, it's awkward because of how many weddings I've watched where they're just like frozen up there and they like don't know what to do. And even one I remember when I was a kid, my uncle was so nervous to kiss his new wife in front of the whole church, and he like pecked her on the lips and ran away, and it was just like he didn't know what to do. So I just remember those, like, I hope that it, and it's awesome that there's someone such as yourself who doesn't create that, or allows that sense of, no, this shouldn't be awkward, this is your moment and you deserve this moment. And then even more so prior to, what is it like getting up to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned this idea about, spunky and, kind of like a comedian. In those moments where there is tension, I usually do lighten things up and
Mm,
maybe crack a joke
mm,
if I can. Um, but, I certainly don't think of myself as a comedian.
yeah,
It's not my show.
yeah.
I'm not up there as the center of attention.
Oh,
I'm here to guide this couple through a very meaningful moment.
wow.
However, it doesn't have to be solemn. I mean, it certainly can be, especially if you come from a religious tradition and you want it to feel, that momentous, and there is that for you. But most of my couples come from a more secular tradition, or they don't want religion in their ceremony.
Mm,
So, why not make it joyous and festive
yeah,
if we can?
right.
But going to your question in terms of intimacy, it's interesting. My practice is pretty separate. So the couples that I
Oh,
officiate, I don't normally counsel, and the couples that I counsel, I may not officiate.
interesting.
Even though it's been more so over the last year that couples that I've counseled are like, "Hope, wait, hold on, you know us really well. It would be awesome if you could tell our story, if you could
Oh,
be there for us on our big day and
yeah,
officiate the ceremony for us." And then I'm even more humbled,
yeah.
than I was at the start. But in my premarital counseling program, uh, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, and I really allow the couple to let me know what it affects them most.
Mm.
Early in the practice, when we looked at this idea of intimacy, it was really only from the physical
Oh,
side, just because that's when I thought about that, and when you think about things that could trip a couple up, things that could stand in the way of a strong relationship, usually you hear sex all the time.
Right.
If there is a breakdown, it's either money, it's either sex, it's improper communication or lack of communication.
Mm-hmm.
So used my couples to teach me a little bit more, as well as the relationships that I had,
Yeah.
to say, hold on a second, what is this intimacy, and and how can we improve it from a larger standpoint, especially when couples were like, yeah, you know what, our sex life is great, but I don't necessarily always feel connected to my partner. So it's like, huh, okay, then let's see what that means. So currently in my practice, we start from the emotional side first. And I like to say, if you don't feel emotionally connected to your partner, you're not going to want to take your clothes off and have any kind of physical connection.
Mm-hmm.
So let's tackle that first. And there also may be times where you can't have, that physical intimacy, or you're not able to have sex for whatever reason. But what are the things that you can do to make sure that you feel connected, to build that intimacy?
Yes, I like to say
So
the
that's
Oops, sorry. I always do that.
um so yeah, so it's been, it's been a lot of give and take, and I learn just as much from my couples as they learn from me.
Yeah, same as on my end of things too. And I'll be shifting from coaching to probably advising. I prefer the term advising now, because it's more of like, here you go, and then take this action. But then to speak to the intimacy stuff, I like to say, okay, intimacy is not just behind closed doors, right? Because that's enough of an all encompassing, but it's not this threatening, oh no, we're saying the word sex kind of like reaction. And then everything that's not behind closed doors is still intimacy. You can have an intimate bond or an intimate experience with your financial advisor in a way that is going to look different than with your romantic partner, right? And so when we bring intimacy to a bigger picture and we just give people the opportunity to look at it a little bit differently, it's less threatening. So then that emotional standpoint, like you were referring to with a partner specifically, we're able to open up that door just a little bit more in terms of, you can have an intimate moment and not need to take your clothes off. So emotionally, if you're not comfortable with just having an intimate moment, there's some work there that can be done. And that's really awesome that you're opening that door early for them, so that when they do hit that wall of, oh no, like, I love my partner, I want to be with them, but I'm not understanding why I have this complete rejection to wanting to go behind closed doors. And that can create like, well, you did this, so now I feel this way. It's like, really, what's below that? There's a subconscious story that's running behind there that can impact the decision making process in a relationship.
Yeah, and that's your genius. I usually don't dig that deep.
Yeah.
So, if couples need to do that, I will happily send those folks your way.
Thank you. So, what's your next genius after the bridging the emotional gap? What's the next kind of conversations you're having around intimacy in your work?
I mean, that's pretty much where we go. It
Ah,
really
okay,
depends. It really depends couple to
sure.
couple
Yeah.
on what their needs
Okay.
are. Um, a lot of times it is giving them permission to be vulnerable.
Yes. It's huge. That
And
alone is like its own category.
because it's allowing them to shift their conversation, allowing them to kind of take a deep breath and dig a little deeper. I've been talking lately this idea about relationships as a glacier,
Mm,
and that when we meet somebody, we only see like the tip, we only see the little bit, and we only show a little bit. But what gets really exciting is the connection over time, that vulnerability that and that trust to be able to show a little bit more, to be able to ask for a little bit more. So even just offering that to a couple to get them to a place that they feel a little bit more comfortable, go, oh, I didn't even realize I was shielding myself. Or, I didn't realize that I should be more curious and, and dig a little deeper and ask you, what's bothering you, or what your desires are, or, how I can help you, or how do you need me to be there for you? And those are some of the juicy conversations that get very excited, very exciting to witness, or at least hear have happened on their own time.
Especially when they're it's like they're getting ready to make this huge decision, and they're shifting their life significantly, and now they've got this new sort of honeymoon phase where they're exploring each other in a whole different way, in a way that they hadn't necessarily explored before. Or if they did, they only went a little bit deeper on the iceberg and not as deep as they could go. And a lot of the conversations I like to have with people, it's interesting, I worked with an individual who was just in the self-exploration program, was more playing in relationships but wanted commitment, just didn't know how to switch from the play to the commitment, was worried, had commitment prior to this new experience and felt like they failed at it. So now they're working towards building this commitment with a new person that they met. And so they like graduated the self-exploration program, everything's great, I'm cool. And then like within a week, wait a minute, I need to come back for the relationship stuff. Now I don't know what to do. It was such a cute transition. And now the conversations we're having are around stages of intimacy and types of intimacy, and really how to bond with each other outside of the bedroom. And they've made a commitment to not have any bond in the bedroom until this outside of the bedroom bond for a couple of months, typically 3 months on average. When you meet somebody new, it's a great time period to get to know them, get to see if you like them, get to see if it's going to work together, if there's going to be some differences that you might need to work out before going to that extremely intimate experience, that trusting and vulnerable experience. Oftentimes we rip off the Band-Aid, let the vulnerability happen, and then we regret that vulnerability because of, oh, well, this problem and this problem and this problem. There's always these this cycle that couples tend to go through, or new dating individuals go through. To get back to my main point, which I tend to do, my listeners know I go off on tangents, are the stages of intimacy: the honeymoon phase, the landing phase, or no, the honeymoon phase, the infatuation phase is really the honeymoon phase. Yep. And then the landing phase, the burying phase, where they like, I hate this about you, the resurfacing phase of, oh, wait a minute, I actually do love you. And then the love phase. Typically the love phase happens around 7 years. And the first couple are like 6 months to a year, and then everything else kind of shifts. That's like overall relationship, but then there's all these little changes that happen in a relationship. So the honeymoon phase arises again when you get married, and then when you have kids, or when you buy your home, right? All of these really big life changes, the stages of intimacy kind of take a role in that time frame, and you're really working with them through that transition, and helping them, like, you're gonna hit the burying phase again. Don't let it destroy. Like, work on these skills now. Take this, these really important basic foundational skills that we can have as humans to help ourselves with getting through life in a way that is polar opposite of what society is teaching us right now.
Oh, that's so brilliant. That's so brilliant.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, then, I mean, once we really get through this idea of, what emotional intimacy can be, is then we can start to shift. I mean, similarly to what you do, shifting to, what happens in the bedroom, what does, the physical intimacy look like between the two of you. And then, they have the opportunity to share whatever they want to. And so, I think the question that I tend to ask is, do you feel comfortable sharing what you, like and don't like in the bedroom? And then the question that I get back is, wait, now?
Yeah.
Do you want us to share that with you now? And it's like,
yeah.
If you would like to, I'm more than happy to hear that. I just want to make sure that each of you feel that you can, if you want, or if you need to.
Or that
And
you
then
can even have the conversation and pause, like in the middle of a really important moment. You should be able to pause and be like, listen, I need this to change, please. And then work to get back into the moment. Like that is a perfectly okay thing. And I think people are just so fearful of pausing that very intimate moment and sharing their truth. And then they have resentment after because of if they were experiencing pain or whatever it might be, they feel resentful towards themselves for not speaking up, but that resent can come out in other ways towards your partner that then it's like, wait a minute, put the brakes on, like way back when this is when we make the decisions, not like after.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, you guys, it's totally okay to take a pause. It's totally
Mhm.
okay to have a sex conversation with your clothes on, or even like, a play by play afterwards. Let's talk about how we did, and,
Mhm.
and ways that we could potentially, have a more successful or a more satisfactory experience for both.
Yes. And then even too, to take it a step further, when we do have that conversation, it's not an attack on you. If there was something you quote unquote did wrong, which I don't even like using those words, like if there was something that happened that was a decision you made and it didn't necessarily go as planned, that is okay. We are human. And actually recently I did a podcast interview on a book called Flawed. We are flawed and we deserve to love our flaws, right? We are not going to be perfect humans. We're going to have really great strengths in some areas and terrible strengths in others. Like weaknesses in others, I should say, and even not even terrible, just weaknesses in others. Like I love emotional intelligence all day long. My strength, I could have a conversation. In fact, so much so that people are like, "You're too much to handle because I haven't looked at my life that deep," kind of thing, right? But I love it. And history, forget it. I can't tell you dates when things happened. I know kind of the gist of it and, and where we are now, but I just can't hold on to dates the way like my husband can. And that's okay. We can still have really good conversations where we're both super satisfied and loving towards each other's talents. Although it did take us some time to get to the burying stage, we got there because we worked for it. We worked towards it, and every day it was like, okay, I'm not going to take this personally. This isn't about me. It's just a struggle they're having, and they'll overcome it and come back around. And just practicing that one radical acceptance and being patient is just so special and important that I feel so empowered that somebody else is having this conversation. So
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and the last thing that I usually bring up in the intimacy conversation that I do is, once we're already deep within this, physical intimacy conversation, is offering them the idea of having sex every day for a certain number of days, whether it be, a week or 2 weeks, or even, a few days if they tend to take more breaks than not.
yeah.
And I love this idea about the flaw. One thing that one of the reasons why I offer this particular challenge is to maybe play with initiation, because usually in terms of couples, they tend what one of them tends to initiate more than the other. So this
Mhm.
idea of being able to play with who starts the sexual experience. But the other thing is that if you fail one night, that you have to try again the second night. You can't
Yeah.
let it get behind, you can't let it get to you to go, yeah, that was horrible. And I'm going to get it in my head. You're going to have to get immediately out of your head
Right.
into your heart and say, okay, I'm trying again. And we're going to try it this way. And let's see what happens. And again, if that doesn't work, well, I have another day to try it again.
Right. And just kind of looking at it as like this like this growth experience, growth mindset versus fixed mindset, really. And one of the ways I do that in a little bit lesser of a way is 20-second hugs. That's something that is really challenging for people. Like, you want me to stop? And it's like, I'm telling you, for 40 seconds of your day, you can take 40 seconds of your day to give somebody in your household, whether it's an animal or the people that you live there, a 20-second hug when you wake up or before you leave the house, and when you get home or before you go to bed, preferably when you first see each other. It's an automatic 20-second hugs. And that 20 seconds actually shifts your brain chemistry. And you'll notice a difference when you're hugging somebody and you go to hug them and they go to just like quick tap and let go, and then you don't let go, and then they're like stiff because they don't know what to do at first, and then they settle into it within seconds. It's a very interesting chemistry to feel that shift in people, and just to give that true like heart to heart connection and the energy that you're shifting in those moments. I had a couple integrate that into their life, and it's a little bit longer in 20 seconds because there's like 4 kids in the house and they're married, right? So it's usually a cuddle puddle, they call it. It's very cute. And then it takes maybe like 2 minutes in the beginning of the day or before they go off and when they get home. And that alone has significantly shifted the aura of their family, especially for the young children, because the young children, like, you're their safety net. So when you're constantly rejecting them, they like don't know what to do with it. So they're wanting more attention. They're going to fight for that more attention. Whereas if you just open arms right in the beginning, that 20 seconds to a minute is just going to satisfy them until the next time they see you, or they're not going to necessarily be bugging you as much. And it's all around so special just to integrate these little things, and basically, again, breaking it down to getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like you were talking about, when your couples are having to accept that, yep, it didn't work today, but I'm going to try again tomorrow. That is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, being okay with how the sensation is in your body. When you're trying to work through change, which is what we initially started to talk about. Change is hard, right? But it's okay.
That's lovely. Your listeners and your watchers, like, there's note taken. They
Yeah.
could be going on right now.
Thank you. Yes. Well, thank you for being here. This is really exciting. I'm super happy to be able to share this premarital counseling with people, because it's such an important stage of life that really needs some good guidance, some non-biased opinion guidance. So thank you for showing us how to make sure we make good steps in that vulnerable time.
Absolutely. Thank you. This was a
Okay.
lovely, lovely conversation.
I'm glad to hear it.